Which Noles are you most excited to talk about amongst all the new players?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is a live show. So those of you that watch it live, thank you for coming in. And those of you who watch it as a recording, I also appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football. But here's the concept that I want to talk about first, and then we'll get into the coaching. The young players for Florida State. This is the key. The Noles have a ton of young guys that are starting to get into the lineup, whether it's as a starter or it's a player that's at least rotating in. The following is just off the top of my head, but here are the things that I enjoy watching as somebody that's an analyst and likes to compare teams around the country. Number one, obviously you got Brock Glenn at quarterback. Makes it a little easier because he has the football in his hand before the ball is distributed. Each and every play, the Noles have offense. However, the defense is where it's been prior to Brock coming into the game against Clemson. You've got Conrad Hussey, you got KJ Kirkland, you've got Edwin Joseph. That secondary has got a chance. And there's also some sophomores that are starting to make noise closer to the line of scrimmage, Nicholson in particular, that I think have a chance to be really good players. Not sure about D-line yet. That's kind of, the difficult spot. Bigger body guys, linemen, usually got to take your third year. But KJ Sampson is one of those guys that I think can be really, really good. He's just, he's fighting through a lot of inexperienced players. We'll see how that goes. I'm not too worried about him getting a chance to make an impact. He's a kid out of New Bern, North Carolina, pretty talented football player. Lucas Simmons, I'm not sure how many of these guys will play right away. But, Sam Singleton, another running back, they're really good. Obviously got Kam Davis this year, Jabril Rawls. Otto's played some, the offensive lineman. He's probably a little ahead of pace to get in the lineup, but they've got some good players there. And by the way, Quindarius Jones is a really good corner too. So the young players for Florida State is what I want to talk about. Anybody that wants to jump in the chat and talk about it, that's great. I just wanted to give people an opportunity. And again, we'll get to the coaching stuff. I have plenty of comments on that. And for anybody that wants to air their grievance or have a question for me, I'll jump into the chat here in a moment. But first off, again, I just want to talk about some of these guys. Number one, let's start with Brock. Just from my experience, this is my expertise with analyzing players as quarterback based on stats. Here's the number that I've talked about many times, and I will repeat it now. Do not forget this. It is super, super consistent with very few exceptions. At least 400 passes into your career is where the light kind of goes on. What do I mean by that? It's one thing to throw a crossing route against man coverage and hit a guy with a dime. Okay, big deal. 7th, 8th, 9th graders that I get a scout in 7-on-7 tournaments can do that. Can you read zone, get the football, they change defenses in the middle of the play, and you have a massive guy coming at you, read the defense, keep your eyes downfield, still make the throw while you're getting blasted. That is football at the quarterback position. And I see that a little bit already with Brock. Like he's maybe even too much, enjoys the physicality of the game. Remember the 4th and 9 play against Clemson? That play did not start out well, like many others. Got a guy right on his tail. He gets away. He goes upfield, has a chance to either throw or run, and he says, to heck with it, I'm taking off. And he gets hit far before he gets to 9 yards, and he grinds it out, gets the football over the yards and gain mark, first down Noles. He's a gamer. Now, that's not the exact same scenario I just talked about, but again, he didn't have any chance to throw. The pass protection on that play was terrible, like it is far too often with Florida State, and he found a way to make it happen. There are post-snap reads in the traditional sense. You read the coverage, you make the throw. Then there are post-snap reads where you got to run for your life and just make it happen on the fly. He's already proving that he understands the art. The science takes longer. That's fine. But he's also made reads where he threw the ball down the field. He made the correct read, like the bomb he threw to Malik. Unfortunately, that was called back on a penalty. Throw and catch is as good as you're going to see this year. That's what you're looking for. When a guy that's in his first year of truly getting a chance to play, I mean, he's a redshirt freshman, has that opportunity and he connects, that gives you some hope for the future. Now let's talk a little bit about Brock's frame. He's got the size, 6'2", 215. He's got a pretty darn good arm. It's gotten stronger since when I saw him a couple years ago at Elite 11 out in California. And he's also a guy that, again, isn't afraid to use it. On the run to throw, pull up, oh, there's nothing there, I'll take off. He uses his physical traits the way they should be used. I won't know for a long time, when neither will anybody else, how much is progressing. With post-snap reads, going to have to talk to people, probably have to see him in a game where a team really is very difficult with what they're doing post-snap. I think most teams are just going to try to take Florida State's receivers away as poorly as they played this year by playing tight coverage and stuff the box, because that's what's worked against Florida State. So we may not know till next year, but that's the biggest thing to look out for. Number 2 here, as far as players that I'm excited about, is Hakeem. I didn't know what was going to happen because he got banged up early. And I'm like, oh, man, not again. He got hurt again. Then he comes right back, and he started being a focal point for the Florida State Seminoles. You can't teach 6'2", 6'3", 215 and running like a deer. He is a very unique, physically built athlete. Long term, he's got 2 more years of eligibility. You're talking about a guy that can go down the field and make big plays, but he can also take, like he had one of these in the game against Clemson, a basic screen right at the line of scrimmage, run through one guy after he ran around another. He got 8 yards out of nothing. The best teams have players that create plays that has zero, and I mean zero, to do with the schematics. My guy is better than your guy. That's it. Hakeem has that kind of physical ability. As far as the receivers go, I'm excited about Will Wayne, Elijah, and all these guys they just brought in. They've got a really good group. The freshman class at receiver is really, really good. Obviously, the 2 tight ends are exciting. That's the given. I could have went with them off the bat, but everybody's seen what they can do already in Amaree and Landen. They've got 2 future NFL tight ends. It's bizarre to have 2 talented tight ends like that at any school at any time in college football. We could be going through a historic run here with the Noles at tight end. Hey, if you shift to a little more 1 back, 2 tight end offense because of those guys, I'm cool with it. They just got to block a little better. But the receiver group with the tight ends is good. And then you get to the backfield. You got Micahi Danzy, who's played a little bit. You got Kam Davis. You got Sam Singleton. The young guys, they look pretty good to me. And to be honest with you, I'm not surprised they look good, but they seem to kind of fit into the offense. Let me give you an example. Micahi had a bomb thrown to him. They can use him on screens, wheel routes, etc. He's one of the fastest players in college football from the jump. He ran 45.99 in the 400 in high school. That is absolutely unequivocally flying. He's the kind of guy that could put up the football cleats and pick up the track spikes and try to go get a sponsorship. He's that kind of speed. But he wants to play football. They can use him in ways that other teams can only imagine, and you cannot simulate that in practice. So once he has a full tilt understanding of the offense, Micahi Danzy, especially when you got Cam or Sam or somebody in the backfield, put him in the slot. Who's guarding him? Florida State will have weapons and matchups that are very, very unique. Can run motion, jet sweeps with that kind of player. He doesn't even have to touch the football, kind of like Jalen Lucas before he got banged up, and he impacts what the other team does just by using the fakes and the motions and the sweep motion and all that. It's very difficult. So I like that a lot too. The question I have is the following. They've got some young players that are pretty good in terms of raw talent along the offensive line, but we haven't seen them because they have so many seniors, 5th-year seniors, and 6-year seniors up front. None of them have really played other than Andre Otto. This is my one, not just concern moving forward with Florida State. I am extremely concerned. Going into the next season, let's be honest, 24, this is basically a big practice now for 25. Florida State's not going to have any experience on its offensive line next year. That's really all that significant other than like maybe one guy. And that's if nobody transfers out, like TJ Ferguson, etc. That's not good. They've got to – I know this is not what coaches want to hear because they want chemistry up front, so do I. But if they don't play some of these younger guys in significant moments from this point of the season to the end, meaning either they start or they're rotating in, I don't want to hear any complaining from them next year, privately or otherwise, when the O-line doesn't have chemistry in games. Lucas Simmons and these guys, come hell, come high water, must play this year. They got talent, figure it out. That's it. it's not like the O-line is exactly playing well. They're 133rd in the nation, 133rd in running the football. Obviously, the O-line stinks. They got to get younger guys in there some way. I don't know how you do it, but they got to make it happen. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but some of these freshmen and sophomores have got to play. They did a terrible job of recruiting from 21 in 20. The O-line group, it's not there, and they're paying for it now. They're going to need, again, at minimum, get 2 offensive linemen from the portal, probably 3. It's terrible for next year, but they still got to have some other guys too. You need some depth, you need competition, etc. So that's the fascinating side of this. When I come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about the defensive side. Then I'll jump into the chat, and we'll go from there. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. All right. My computer is not being friendly. There we go. All right, FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Let's talk a little bit about defense for Florida State in a more specific point of view here. One of the areas that myself and just about anybody else that covers Florida State has been disappointed with is linebacker recruiting. I mentioned Nicholson just a little bit ago. Graham's another young player. They need guys like that to really make an impact moving forward. And they've started to. That's a good note. I mentioned KJ Sampson. That's a key player that's going to get a few reps here and there. The D-line's been really weird. It's kind of a hodgepodge of great and then terrible. I forget which one is which, but they're 14th and 18th with sacks and tackles for loss. But yet they're one of the worst defenses in the country on third downs. Those two things should not even be remotely congruent. They should be repelling each other like magnets that have the same end of a magnet. It's really weird. I don't understand why that works that way. I don't understand how it's possible. But that's where Florida State's at. So why not get some of the younger guys in and give them a chance? Daniel Lyons is another guy I want to add into that equation. He's a kid out of the greater Miami area. He's played pretty well this year. He's a redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore. But he's a guy that I think will start next year. He might be your key guy. Along with KJ Sampson up front. That's a good start. That gives you a point that you can say, okay, we've got this. We got Lamont. We got some other young players coming up on the edge. You're probably going to lose Patrick. You're pretty much going to lose your D-line in general. Marvin, maybe. I'm not sure how good Marvin will be down the stretch. He's got a long way to go to decide to turn pro, I can tell you that. But they don't have a lot of experience up front next year at D-line either. So I think this is a team that's, quite honestly, looking for some younger players on that side of the ball in the trenches too down the stretch. I know Florida State's coaches are going to look at this like, we're winning out. That's how coaches think. They're not winning out, though. We all know that. If they go through the rest of this season, especially to get down the last couple games, and they're losing again to the point where it's just obvious you're not going to bowl game, they better play the younger players come hell, come high water. There will be a revolt, I know, on this shows with the live shows as it should be. And there will probably be a lot of fans that are very disappointed otherwise. But at the same time, you got to play these guys because next spring, you can't just be green on both offensive and defensive line. Then expect things to go well down the road. Let's jump into the chat here just a little bit. Mike, what's up, brother? What's up, Brian? Go Noles. Mike, go nuts. I tell you what, this week is a great week, by the way. I just want to throw this out here. Having the bye week is so important. To get healthy, they're banged up. And to get Brock time and then some of these young players, what we're talking about here today is an opportunity for some guys to kind of get into the discussion, at least a little bit, and talk about the opportunity to make it happen. Because if they don't play this week into practices, how in the world are they going to be ready to play against Duke, North Carolina, Miami, all the teams they have left? They've got to be ready by practicing this week. And when I say that, I mean with the ones. The older guys, it's a problem, but they got to do a lot of things to make that happen. So it's a big deal. You've got to find a way to make that happen. Also, when you talk about the Florida State Seminoles this week, the quieter that it is, the better. If you haven't seen, I'm not even going to repeat what he did. Colby Young, former Miami player, transferred to Georgia. His football career is pretty much over. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up. I will not repeat it. Complete idiot. Florida State doesn't need any of that. Make sure when you're recruiting this week, which Florida State will obviously be out on the road recruiting, you recruit better character guys than Colby Young. That's unbelievable. Let's see, Garrett, why haven't we ran the Wildcat this season? That's a good question. I thought they might with Kam or with one of the other guys. You can do it in certain situations. It's not like it's a shocker. I'm a pretty big fan of it against certain defenses, depending on their front, how basic they are, and depending down and distance and where you're at. Against goal line, you really need to know what you're doing as the guy that's got the ball because you can get crushed. But in the middle of the field, short yardage, you can really have some fun with that. Even a running back can throw a pop pass off a little, like he dives down, then they just throw it over. You can do something like that every once in a while and keep a defense honest from crashing the line and making it happen. It's pretty interesting. All right, Red Mamba. Love your stuff, Brian. I wish you still came on with it. Dono talking about flips to Miami, go Canes. Yeah, I'm not going to just go away from the Miami show. I'll go on every now and then if Dono asks me, but I have no idea my schedule day to day, brother. I honestly don't. Garrett, are we better off sticking with Brock and Luke than getting another transfer quarterback? Use that money for a better O-line. This is something I talked about on the show I did earlier today. This is the hardest thing, and I don't have an answer for this. You have to be at practice, literally everyone, all of it, to know the answer to this. You can only speculate. How good are Brock and Luke at picking up the offense? That's really the only question there is. You'll get more chemistry with just reps between now and the end of next summer going into fall camp. They'll have plenty of reps with the receivers. And Florida State has a lot of young guys. Yeah, Brown and all these other guys that are redshirt freshmen, sophomores. They're fine at the skill spots. But if you go spend money on a quarterback, hypothetically, that's money out of the kitty that you're taking away from the O-line. I think what as dire as the O-line situation is in terms of experience post-2020, obviously this year's team's experience, they're just bad at O-line, which makes no sense. You have to go O-line and just ride with Brock, barring him getting a catastrophe of an injury. That's all I can say. You're going to have a third quarterback come in. If you want to take a quarterback out of the portal that just wants to be there, a grad guy, an extra guy, like somebody that's out of the Ivy League or out of the MAC, that's fine. But you'll have 3 scholarship quarterbacks, and I think you'll be fine. The question becomes, can you make it happen? Big if. Can you make it happen if you don't get at least 2? And I'm guessing 3. Not just good, but really good offensive linemen. Next year could be a repeat of this year up front. Because they're going to lose the majority of their guys, and they stink already. Like, you're not going to have any chemistry. I mean, they can't be worse. Surely they can't. But you're not going to have any chemistry. And as I'm going to talk about here in a minute, there needs to be an O-line change. Let's get to that right now. Atkins needs to go. I think everybody needs to understand that. There's no friendly here. I was going to wait till after the season, but this is ridiculous. Florida State should never be 133rd in rushing in college football. The offensive line shouldn't be embarrassing week after week in college football. He's got to go. So they're probably going to have a new O-line coach and coordinator. There's so much new that's going to happen with the offense in the offseason. I think you have to spend the money on the O-line and get back to this is so boring. Get back to basics. You have no choice. Because if not, you're going to be in the same situation where the only team that has a worse rushing offense than you is Kent State. Maybe the worst program in the history of Division I football that is currently operating. Just saying. Malik Stuckey. Funny how Mike brings up Luke every time someone mentions Brock. leads me to believe they don't trust Brock, or 2, he's scared Luke might bail. A little of both. Here's something I've learned forever. Coaches are very thin-skinned. They can't even imagine something negative being said about them, which is ridiculous. And 2, they will lie to try to get kids to stay. One of the things that's been outed forever is at the end of spring practices, as an example, if there's a quarterback race, they never name the leader. Name a school that names a leader between the quarterbacks. Never happens. Why? Because they know the backup will leave. Well, it's gotten to the point now where that's too bad. If you do not name so-and-so the leader, the other guys automatically leave anyway. But you can at least try to get him to spring ball by not saying anything through this year. And Luke just got there. I know he likes Florida State. He really liked Mike. I talked to him about it extensively multiple times during tournaments and Elite 11, et cetera, when I'd see Luke. I don't think he's going to transfer. He's going to stick it out for a while. If he's not playing by his junior year, I'd imagine he'd leave. That's just nature of the beast. But if he doesn't eventually beat Brock out, that's just what you have to expect. If he sticks around, you're at a bonus. But most guys are going to transfer. That's just the way it works. So we'll see how that goes. Alpha Papa, the offense can't pass. I don't even know what you're saying here. How is the rushing attack the worst in college football? Well, there's 134 teams and they're ranked 133rd. Out of the FBS in the Power 4, they're dead last. So that's how. Garrett, did our staff fail Armella? Big dude, highly recruited, 3rd year, and he's always on the bench. I don't know what's going on there. I saw him and got to know him a little bit when he was at St. Thomas Aquinas down in Fort Lauderdale. But to be truthful with you, I really don't know what the deal is. I thought Julian Armella would have played by now, and he hasn't. Maybe he's had injuries. There's something else there, but he's a really bright guy. I'm not sure what it is. That's a great question, because is it a development thing again? I'm not sure. It's a problem, though, because you can't be in a scenario where your best young offensive linemen aren't getting PT. If they're not making it, especially as many misses as they've had, that just accentuates the need to go back in the portal. We'll get back into the chat after this on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded the Game Time app yet? If you're like me and you like going to see live action, because there's nothing quite like it, seeing a basketball game, a football game, baseball game, boxing match, or even going to a concert or any kind of play or anything else, Game Time's got you covered. All you got to do is download the app, check out what you're looking for by typing it in, finding the event, clicking on it, and you can even see your seat. When you click on it, you can see the venue from that seat, what it looks like. It's really cool. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, let's get back into the chat a little bit here. Yeah, the Amaree comment was really, really interesting, by the way, because I'm not sure what's going on with that. That's really weird. Let's see. Ed says they need to go out and get tackles. I'll come back to that. I'm glad you mentioned that was my next point about the O-line. So very, very good timing. They have a bunch of guards. If they would have gotten that Indiana guy and kept Bless Harris, it would have helped. Yeah. Here's the deal. There aren't enough tackles in the high school ranks, JUCO ranks, and the transfer portal. If you all dumped them into just the high school level, it wouldn't work. There aren't enough of them. It's not even close to enough. They get hurt. They're not good enough. They can't pass block. They don't understand how to do it, whatever. It's a complex position. So that leads to the following. For the number of teams that need at least one, if not 2 offensive tackles, and Knowles might need 2. I don't know. We'll find out next spring. Florida State will be lucky to get 1, because there will be at least 30 or 40 other schools going after about 5 guys. What does that do? That drives up the price. What does that cause a problem with? Florida State is not, and I repeat, not an elite school with NIL. I said elite. They're solid, but they're like Miami competing with them. They're going to lose that almost every single time. Miami's NIL is on another planet. So is Auburn's. So is Tennessee's. So is Ohio State's, at Texas A&M, etc. They've got more money that it's not even competitive. Tackle is a huge problem this year, maybe next year, maybe even after. It might be the biggest problem in the program. So, Ed, you just brought up a really good point, and thank you for doing that. But prove me wrong, unless one of these younger guys, maybe Lucas is ready, I have no idea, but they need younger guys immediately to play this year to prepare, because O-line is hard anyway. But being on that edge against a true pass rusher from a Florida, a Miami, a big bowl game against Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, whatever, that tackle's on an island, man. That's got to be an elite player. Florida State needs to hit the recruiting world in a much better way to tackle. Fortunately, they're getting a little better with their O-line recruiting based on the current class, but they got a long way to go. Here's another one from Ed. They should have moved their current tackles to guard and filled in the tackle position through the portal. Instead, they went after guards and they really screwed up. Here's where I disagree. They just couldn't get the tackles. It's not they didn't try. They just didn't get them. Again, what I just said is true. There are maybe 4 or 5, and that number is probably high, of the desirable tackles in the portal. This isn't my information. This is from the people that are getting paid millions of dollars. There are very few tackles that are super high-end guys to begin with. How many of them are going to stick? If you're that good, you just go to the pros, or you stick around one more year where you're at, take the NIL where you're at, and just go to the NFL. There just aren't enough of them. That's the problem. Malik Stuckey. Why couldn't we keep Biscuit? Did they really believe 84 was going to be our check down? I don't know what the deal was on the price. I never heard the backstory, but I assume he got more money and got more playing time. That's a great question. This is not a good take. Fire the whole staff, get Missouri's head coach. Missouri's head coach just got his clock cleaned. They just lost 31-10 to A&M. I'm not so high on that. Barbara, I'm sorry. I disagree there. Garrett, if you were in charge of retooling Mike's position coaches, what % of recruiters to developers would you go? I would go 70% recruiting, 30% developers. Here's the thing. It's got to be both. That's an old question that's commonly brought up, Garrett. But in today's world, especially like positions like O-line, it's got to be coach first, and quarterback, same thing. But you got to recruit at every position. The key recruiting positions are running back, receiver, and DB. Those 3 traditionally, and you'd prefer your D-line coach to be a pretty good one, which Hagan's has been, obviously, historically speaking. But at the same time, this staff, and compared to their 18 schools, I'll go over the list again here in a second, they can win a national title. Florida State has won. Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Georgia, Bama, Auburn, Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU, Oklahoma, USC, Oregon, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State. That's it. The schools that are winning, think about the teams that are consistently finishing in the top 8, let's say, in college over the last half dozen years. The head coach is involved more in recruiting. Norvell's an okay recruiter. If you rank those top 18, Norvell would be in the bottom 4. As a staff of those 18 schools, they might be dead last in recruiting of those 18 schools. Dead last. Because here's why. Florida State is one of the easiest schools to recruit to in the country, based on location, history, being Power 4, being in Florida. They've got every freaking advantage you can imagine, and they can't sign a top 10 class. That is ridiculous. The facts are in the numbers. They had a couple of pretty good classes here recently, but those need to be the bottom end, not the top end of what they've done. They're not even close to what they need, and that's why we're just here in a second, after I get through a few more questions, I'm going to delve in, and I'll just go ahead, throw this out there. It's time to talk about the Florida State coaching staff getting a major retooling. If you've got comments about it, let it rip, brother. I don't know what is going on with the locker room, but it ain't a talent issue. I hate to say it, but Adam Fuller's defense is always in the wrong position. Mike Norvell, where is the creativity? You're not wrong. This is from Robert Arena. I'm going to make my comments about the defense in a minute. I'll come back around on this in just a second. Why is Mike Norvell getting a pass for putting the program in this position? I'm not getting on board for a second rebuild. Well, it's not a matter if you're getting on board with it. It doesn't matter who the coach is now. That's what it is. Next year is a rebuilding year. They'll be lucky to be 6-6. That's my guess, because they're going to be completely rebuilt up front on both sides of the ball, meaning the lines. That's hard. They'll have a ton of skill talent. I think skills will be pretty good, But when you fail in the trenches to recruit O-line, it haunts you for years. Florida State's been digging themselves out of this hole since, 2018? And they've never gotten completely over the top. They must hit more elite high school offensive linemen. I'm talking 3 or 4 every single year. There are about 5 teams that do it well. They're teams that you will recognize. Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State. What do they have in common? Oh, yeah, there's this team called Alabama. They're always in the top 10. If you recruit elite O-linemen year after year, you put yourself in a position to win. That's the problem right now at Florida State. Again, they're going to lose, I believe it's off the top of my head, 4 offensive linemen off a bad unit. And the younger guys aren't getting any playing time. So you're starting over there. You're going to lose at least 3 defensive linemen. So what are you going to do next year? You're probably going to struggle. There'll be a 6-16. That's my guess. So with that, I want to make a few comments now, just in general, about where I think this Florida State staff is with what needs to happen. I thought it would wait to the end of the year, but it's just gotten blatant. There's no reason to hide from this. Florida State stinks, not bad, stinks at several positions on the staff in terms of the combination of recruiting and doing their job pulling the weight. O-line, linebacker, they got to go. And the O-line coach is obviously the coordinator. He got to go. He is a horrible recruiter from the time I look at it because, like we mentioned earlier, I forget which person, why isn't Armello playing? Why aren't some of these other guys playing? I don't know. And now he's got a development problem because he had a bunch of guys back that are seniors, 5th-year seniors, and 6th-year guys, and they regressed. How does that work? Atkins got to go. The linebacker coach, linebackers are out of position. The wrong run gap fits over and over. The, 59-yard play? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's what it was for Clemson in the last game. Linebacker fills into the hole, the same hole the D lineman's at, leaves his gap. The running back goes right behind him and runs for 59 yards. These kind of plays happen over and over again. Can't happen. He's got to go. Those are the 2 that I know. This is where it gets dicey, though. I don't know how you grade quarterback because DJ just not any good. And you just started with Brock. They've recruited 2 good quarterbacks in a row. Quarterback coach, I don't think is the issue currently, but they brought him over too. So there's different ways to look at it. You didn't get it done in recruiting 21-22. So I get it if that's not the case. Recruiting is everything. I think it's the key to every program. I put it at 80% recruiting, 20% development. If you don't believe me, talk to Saban, talk to Kirby, talk to Urban, talk to any of the guys got rings walking around right now on planet Earth. They're going to talk about recruiting first. That being the case, whatever percentage they want to put, recruiting comes first. If you can't recruit, even if you're an elite coach, you're probably not going to help much in this era. The next guy I want to talk about, and this is just weird to me. I don't know how the tight end position took such a dive. You got experienced guys and they were awful, and now your 2 best players are freshmen. I don't know what's going on with that. Somebody can explain it to me. Let it rip however you see fit, but that's really, really weird. D-line, Odell. I don't think it's an Odell problem as much, and I'm going to save this for last overall, then I'll get back into the chat. But just remember, NIL was an issue going into this year, so I'm going to come back to that. Just want to put your mind on that, let you go where you want. Obviously, Surtain, DB, that's the one lock. He's a really good coach. He's not going anywhere. Special teams have been good. Anybody that works with special teams, and I know multiple coaches do on every staff, have at it. But, I mean, your kicker's elite. Your punter's probably the best in the country. Maybe your kicker is too. I'm not concerned about that. Coverage teams have been pretty good. I think Florida State's in a pretty good spot. So that leads me back to the defensive line situation. This is just something I heard, and I don't have any way to verify it, but this is a problem. When you miss at D-line, even for a year, just like O-line, it takes longer for linemen, typically speaking, to play. You go to the portal. Well, you got guys in the portal that came in. Some wanted more money. Some guys you recruited also wanted more money, and they apparently, for what I heard, got that cash, but they haven't played consistent. As I mentioned earlier in the show, Florida State has tackles for loss and sacks are both top 20 in the nation. But yet they get gouged too often. They got guys, I think, that are playing more for themselves, trying to get the NFL instead of playing for Florida State, which leads to the NFL. They don't have enough team chemistry. They need to find a way to recruit. In this, I'm just using D-line as a specific area that you can use as a microcosm. They got to pick guys more on not just talent, but chemistry. And I thought they had done that up until this year, but maybe something's changed. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe Florida State can't either, because I'm sure they're aware of this. But me first ends up with seasons like this. If you don't believe me, look what just happened to Alabama. For those of you who don't know, Jaheim Otis has put himself in the portal. Who's Jaheim Otis? He's a 370-pound nose guard that is a perfect example of what you want in a 3-4 zero tech. I'm massive, and I've met the guy. Like when you shake his hand, you don't see yours. He is enormous. They're losing him. He didn't play a ton the last few games or whatever. Very talented guy, probably not the most eager, but they took a shot on him because of the position he plays. It's a super rare body type. I get it. But Florida State, they might have been better off losing some guys before this year. Really believe that. Alabama's taking on water. They got some guys. I don't think they're the right guys. That program's in trouble. Florida State has already went down that path. They just can't go back down it again next year. They might have to cut bait and be bad for a year or two and rebuild the culture. Recruiting's part of it, and they got to be very selective with their NIL additions or subtractions, as it may be, moving forward. With that, again, if you want to comment on any of this, let it rip. I don't really have any more opinions on the coach. I need to see more, especially like quarterback. I have no idea. Brock's the next guy, and he's played one game. I have no way to really opinionate on that. Need a safety coach, someone who can bring in an elite talent at the safety position. Here's the thing. Well, they can get better. Don't get me wrong. They're doing pretty good. They got Kirkland. They got Hussey. They got guys like that. They're going to play in the NFL. I think both of them will. They need to find a way to be more congruent, safety, corner, and linebacker, and passing guys off. There's always somebody in the game that goes scot-free. I think it's more linebacker related, but again, it depends on the play. There's a lot of different nuances. Florida State's ability to pass off on crossing routes, deep overs, anything where the guy's kind of in between one person and another in his zone or whatever, there just seems to be too many mental errors. And that's why they suck on third down. They're terrible on third downs. They're giving up like 46% or something, yet they have an elite pass rush. That should never happen, ever. So I don't get it. Bama is running a 4-2-5 now. That's what Ed says. That may be the case, but that also means you did something else stupid. You have the rarest of rare talent to match a 3-4 defense, and you went away from it. Dumb. That's on Bama. That program is going to be 9-3. He'll get fired after year 3 or 4. Southern Man, with rising costs to boosters for NIL, it has created a win-now culture. It's a return on investment problem. There's truth in that. It has to be regulated. There is no way to regulate it, bro. Let me cut to this right now. If they put a cap on it or whatever, people are still just going to cheat. There is no regulating the money going to players. Ever. That will never happen. Yo Fly, what coaches do you think let go at the end of the season? Names. That's the ones that I think will. I don't know what they'll do, but look at it this way. If they don't get rid of Atkins, I mean, you're 133rd. 133rd, and look up a couple stats here. I mean, how do you not get rid of Atkins? He got in trouble. He missed the first, 3 or 4 games, whatever it was, because getting in trouble for recruiting a player off somebody else's roster or whatever he did. I don't know how you can't. He's number one that's got to go. I don't see how that's not just blatantly obvious. Randy Shannon's not a good recruiter, and the linebackers continue to make the same mistakes over and over. That's a problem. Let's see. Fuller, if you want to talk about it, it's possible, but he's been with him a while. I think with Fuller, the bigger thing there will be, it's not can we fire you? Obviously you can. It's twofold. How much money is it going to cost us to get rid of him? How much money is it going to cost to get a guy that we can actually get? If you're going to get rid of him, they know the boosters are going to expect a splash higher. Here's the problem Florida State is in. Whether you agree or not, next year Florida State is going to have a head coach on the hot seat. That's the way I see it. How many coaches are going to attach their wagon to that? This is a lose-lose scenario. Got to fire some coaches, but who are you really going to be able to hire? Why would you go somewhere for a year? If you think there's a chance that staff's going to get fired, why would you join on? This is a really awkward spot. You better believe in yourself to turn it around if you want to take the job at Florida State, because they're not going to bowl this year. They're bad. He's going to be on the hot seat. You can say that he's not, but it only takes one booster to say, I'll pay this out. And I know he's got a big, massive contract. After 25, he could be gone. That's how the reality of college football works. Like it, dislike it, doesn't matter. That's how it works. And it works in opposite. Oh, I'm not going to pay the buyout, but I'm also not going to donate anymore. There are people that donate money in 7 figures. When those people say bye-bye, that's when coaches also go bye-bye. It works in different ways. These coaches at other schools know that, and it's cool to coach at Florida State, but if they get rid of Fuller, they're going to have to pay close to $2 million a year just for a coordinator. And it's going to, can they get an elite, not a good, elite defense coordinator? I don't know. Neb524 said, it's the money on recruits. Well, I mean, you got to use NIL, but you got to be careful what you ask for. This is something I talked about with a buddy of mine earlier, just a private conversation. I'm to the point now where if it's an elite top 5, top 10 player in the country, that's one thing, like a Jeremiah Smith. But anybody else, I'm not paying upfront money beyond just a little bit, because too many guys are opting out or transferring because they're getting recruited off your roster and going to another, and the NCAA is not doing anything about it. The NCAA sucks. It is a joke. So it's really awkward. I understand you got to do it a little bit, but it's got to be very, very specific. And you can't be in a situation where guys can just, oh, we're in the middle of the summer, we want to renegotiate or we're not playing. They got to figure out a way to get away from that. Florida State's been caught in that a couple of times. They've cut bait sometimes and sometimes didn't. They got to get away from that. If you have guys like that, bye-bye. Southern Man, good point. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Galaxy King, Atkins, best recruiter on staff currently. If he is, then Florida State's not winning another game ever. They can't recruit O-line, brother. That's his own spot. He stinks. Recruiting is a problem at this point. Bottom line, that is from Ryhaf 3. Look, it's not a problem. It's a major problem. Their high school recruiting is subpar for an elite level program. It's not in question. It's fact. Guys got to roll. At minimum, 2 or 3 guys probably going to roll after this year. Whether or not they're fired or they suddenly find a job, I don't care. There need to be changes. Call it whatever you want. There got to be guys that go. Neb524. May as well wait and hire a defensive head coach. I mean, that's what it depends. The offensive, defensive head coach is not the issue to me. It's whether or not, whatever side the ball that the head coach is, are they open to allowing the other side of the ball to be aggressive? Checkbox. And when I say that, I mean this as far as practice too. Let me give you an example. If you watched any of the Vandy Alabama game, I turned on and watched a little of that. Vandy smacked them in the mouth from play 1 to the end. Bama. I know the players in Bama's front 7. I know a bunch of them personally, been around them, seen them at camps, whatever. They got way more talent than Vanderbilt. That is how you practice. Alabama is not hitting enough in practice. They're not focusing on physicality enough in practice. And I don't think Florida State is either. So if you hire a defensive coach and you cure that to a certain part, do you also still allow the offense to throw it around in practice and recruit to a style that you actually play, where you have a pro-style offense that's balanced, kind of like Bowden's was? He probably had the most balanced offense in the history of college football, and that's why they recruited so well. Everybody got a taste. If you don't, you get your butt kicked. Ask Alabama. How's Vanderbilt treating you right now? Next year, this is from YoFly, will be Norvell's last year. This whole wait is too deep. Us fans aren't about to keep investing and watching a bad product. I agree. This is a business at the end of the day. 100%. I think he will get fired at the end of next year. I've said that several times. I ain't backing away from it. Neb, I'm in on players like that. Travis Hunter, etc. Yeah, if you get a guy like Travis, again, there's upfront money for a guy like that. It's different. I saw Allen Iverson in high school. Best high school basketball player I ever saw live. Shocker. Travis and Allen are, without question, the two most twitchy guys I've ever seen live. Now, I got to see Travis from 5 feet away at 7-on-7 turns, standing right behind him, filming him and stuff like that. You get a guy like that, you got to make an exception. That's cool. But for the most part, you can't, because most of those guys, they're looking for their next payday. It's ridiculous. Look at Nebraska with Raiola. Look, that's a weird deal. They suck. They got big on NIL. His dad played there, and they didn't have anybody at quarterback. That's a unique scenario. But he was a good player. They went and got a quarterback because they needed one. Let's see. This is an interesting question. Jamming to shirts. Where does the O-line rank nationally? As far as the Power Four, probably did last. Name an offensive line that's worse than Florida State's in the Power Four, meaning Big Ten, ACC, SEC, Big 12. Name one worse. They are 133rd in rushing nationally. Kent State is the only team worse. Florida State's O-line sucks. Let's see here. Wax lifters. Credit to Seminole fans. You have won back so many. I will be honest. Last year, the fan base was so annoying by denying the obvious that they did not belong in the playoff and acting in a bad way. I don't know where that comes from, but everybody's got their opinions. Have at it. I mentioned we need to hit in practice. I'm sure they hit to a certain degree, but like their tackling is bad. Their run gap fits are bad. This is in the middle of practice. This is how you scheme it up on the board. Players aren't picking it up. I don't know what else to say. Like, you got experienced linebackers that suck. Let's see. Southern man. How is it Alex Galosh at USF can run for 200 yards against Bama and we can't run for more than 20 per game? Southern man. Question of the day that shows you Alex Atkins needs to go. He got to go now. He's terrible. Let's see. Offensive analyst immediately to restructure our offensive scheme, and same for defense. If someone gets butthurt, so be it. That's from Ray McCoy. They need somebody else to kind of help take over or kick somebody out. I agree. If they fired Atkins right now, it wouldn't bother me in the bit. It would send a message that we're going to get better or we're going to die trying. I'm down with that, Ray. YoFi, do you think that Norvell regrets not taking the Bama job? He looks checked out during the games. I don't know if he does or not. The Bama job's a weird deal. I live in the state of Alabama. The heat as the Alabama coach cannot be put into perspective. Florida State's got pressure. There is nothing like the Alabama job in compared to Florida State. That's a whole nother level of pressure. The people live through such a thin tunnel view. There's no pro team in this state. There's nothing else like it. So maybe not. But I don't think he's good enough to be Bama coach, and the same thing would have happened. He'd have screwed it up too. Ray McCoy. The problem with offensive line and run game is our scheme is awful. Our run game looks like a rugby scrum. I think the plays are okay, but they're running into each other. You got guys that literally did that earlier this year. I forget which game it was. And you have guys that just miss on their assignments. Like they will double team one guy while another guy runs through. The miscommunication with Florida State's line is just a joke. Need more inside drill. That's from Neb524. That's 100%, among other things. I mentioned this on a recent show. Florida State's got to come up with a bread and butter running play, preferably inside zone, GT, something like that, the guard tackle trap play that's famous, that you can go get 3 yards. If you can start 2nd and 7 at worst, preferably 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5, you open play action, more RPO chances, and your pass game can be dictated by you, not by the down and distance. They suck at running the ball so much, even with multiple running backs that will play in the NFL, they can't run the ball. That's how bad Florida State's run game is. Pathetic. Jammin' t-shirts. It's been mentioned that Norvell favors speed above all. Okay. For wide receivers, would you take hands over speed at this point? I would. They don't have any problem with speed. They got plenty of it. They got to get a couple more guys that can move the chains. I think Elijah, the kid they brought in from Washington, D.C., will help with that. They've got plenty of guys that they brought in. All four of the receivers they brought in this freshman class can catch. I think they're good there, but they got to have more chemistry. And just having a competent quarterback that sets up the routes and gets to know them. The difference you will see from, let's even say the Florida game at the end of the year to game 2025 season against Alabama, ironically, will be massive. It's just reps. But it's just wild how many times they've dropped the ball. And the tight ends are part of it. Landen and Amaree is going to help alleviate some of that. So I think this area will kind of take care of itself, but you got to have guys catch the ball. But Sean, what's up, brother? So you think Mike can't fix the problem? The O-line going to be gone next year. I don't want to imagine how the O-line will be next year. Yeah, I don't think he can. Because, again, this is the do not pass go part of being a head coach at an elite program. If you are not an elite recruiter in today's world, you do not pass go. Here's the problem. Again, there are 18 schools. Traditionally, they can win a title. Nebraska used to be the other one. They got to prove to me they can get back into that context. But they're only – look at the schools that are winning the biggest. And I mean like upper echelon. It's the same schools that are in the top 5 to top 10 every year in recruiting. The only ones that are sort of borderline and they do a better job of retention than anybody else are Penn State and Notre Dame. And they have top 10 classes sometimes, but they retain more players, have better culture. But it's Georgia, it's Bama, it's Ohio State. Those three schools murder everybody. Clemson is, they got a weird situation with their NIL, with obviously nothing in the portal, and then LSU. Those programs are the ones normally. Now, Brian Kelly screwed up LSU's defense, and I don't know how he's done that, but he has. But those are the programs that are the easiest to win at in college football, and now Texas has a real coach. A&M does too, so it's gotten even harder. It's going to be harder to get players out of Texas for all these schools, so they both got legit big-time coaches. Good luck. So Florida State's in trouble. The next coach they hire as a head coach has to be 100% home run, experienced, elite recruiter, has experience in college, preferably some NFL. And what I'm asking for is not realistic, but that's what they need. I do not think Norvell can fix it. He is none of those things. I think he is a long way from what they need. Let's see here. Creative Crud. Do you think Brock might transfer out? No, I know Brock pretty well. He's a happy kid. He ain't going anywhere. Malik Stuckey. Be honest, watching coverage over the spring, I heard with the wide receivers were trash and linebackers never thought we would be this bad running the ball. Receiver and linebacker were concerns, but nobody thought it was going to be drop city USC with the receivers. And nobody thought this bad at linebacker with just the randomness. Now, having Lundy out doesn't help, but that's you have recruiting misses at linebackers. Now you got to sleep in the bed you made. Ray McCoy, New York Jets. Salia just got fired. Bring him in for defense ASAP. He needs something to do. Well, it can't be worse than what we've been seeing. Wax lifters. At what point do the Florida State players need to return the Hellcats back to the FSU players back to the dealership? I don't think that's got anything to do with it, really. Maybe about Georgia, but that's okay. Let's see here. Galaxy King. Cutting ties with Atkins will be a mistake for Florida State from a recruiting standpoint, but definitely understand some changes needed after 1-5, which is unacceptable for anyone from the Big Three. Look, Atkins sucks at recruiting offensive linemen. That's his position. You're wrong. He is terrible at recruiting O-line. How many of the current O-linemen did he recruit that are starting from the high school ranks? 0. 0 for 5. And this is year 5 for the Florida State program. He's not a good recruiter. Neb, counter is stupid bread and butter play. It would be way better off being ISO, linebacker, or inside zone. GT is what like the Redskins did and some other great teams over history. It's got to be one of your plays, and I don't care which one it is. It depends on your running back and your guys. But whatever it is, then you can counter with other things. Florida State can't run a quarterback sneak. Their run game's so bad, it's just embarrassing. Rhinos. The offensive line was average last season, true. Trey Benson and Jordan Travis made something out of nothing quite off. Yeah, that's 100%. Think about this. In the Florida game, they could have lost. Trey had 3 touchdowns. There was a couple really good plays. They blocked it up, but he maximized them too. But how many times have we seen a hole definitively there for Tofili or for Cam or for Keziah or anybody else, quarterback, anybody? It has been slim pickings. John Shields, Acton recruits who? What is the recruiting ranking? Bad. Yeah, he recruits, but he doesn't do a very good job of it. That's the point. All right, let's see here. Just want to make a few more comments, and then I'll wrap it up here. Number one, thank you very much for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Also want to thank everybody for stopping in today with this in general and kind of letting it be known. Obviously, I'm not an Atkins guy. Look, I mean, I'm sure they're nice people or whatever, but the linebacker coach, O-line coach got to go. There's other questions. We'll see how the rest of the season kind of grinds out. But again, remember, this is a business at the end of this year. All of the following is very important as we go into the rest of the week. It's an off week, so we'll talk a little bit more about this and expand on it. The boosters in the IL are going to come into play here. You can't take a quarterback now with all your O-line problems. You're going to be changing coaches. You need to hire an O-line coach that's an elite recruiter. There are very few of them. O-line coaches, as a general rule, are terrible recruiters. They are. Most of them are not the most fun and fuzzy kind of guys to hang out with. They're not. But you need elite recruiter at that spot. That's going to be rough. You're going to have to pony up a bunch of money, and you're going to have to fire somebody. You got to pay them on the way out too. There's a lot of coming and going, and you're still in the middle of the grant of rights and all this other stuff. It is complex. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but this will be one of the most important off seasons in the history of Florida State football. Norvell stays, Norvell doesn't, whatever. But you're going to have coordinator, in my opinion, at minimum, and 1 or 2 other guys go. We'll see. But if they don't make any changes, Florida State's program's in more trouble. If they double down, this is our staff, next year will be a complete catastrophe again. This is not the staff to get it done. That's obvious. Anybody wants to argue with me, give me a call. I'll go through the stats with you, and I can publish them again, but they're in the 100s on so many stats, it's ridiculous. The stats I published the other day, 8 of the stats I brought up, they were in the 100s in offense alone. Come on, man. This is Florida State Seminoles football. Give me a break. That is a joke. That is on the coaches. This is year 5. You recruited these players. You figure it out. You didn't do it. It's your failure. You got to go. That's bottom line. If you don't like it, too bad. I don't care. This is big-time football, and you're making big money. Figure it out. That's bottom line. With that, once again, thank you very much for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate it. Please hit that like button, hit that subscription, and subscribe to this channel. I will see you again on Thursday.